All right, cool. So, welcome everyone to the newbie coaching call. My name is Amir Khan. We do these coaching calls every week on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And in case you're wondering where the recordings are, I put the link in the chat. So, if you scroll all the way up, I put the link in there. So, all the recordings are there. You just have to kind of scroll through and find the relevant recording. All right, so on these weekly calls, I have two or three formats. One format is I sometimes choose a topic. And if you go to the recording, you'll see I've done a whole bunch of different topics from market deep dive to talking about fundamentals about slow flips and a whole bunch of other topics. All right. And all of them are for the benefit of newbies. So they are from the perspective of a newbie. So you won't find anything advanced concept. I don't like to talk about those things because the call is for newbies. So the first one, like I said, are topics about subject that I will talk about. Sometimes I have a guest. So today we have a guest. And sometimes I just do a question answer session. So the last two sessions, I believe, were just question answers, and so there's no agenda or anything. I just come on and I'll let whoever wants to ask any questions. So having said that, I do have to make one more announcement that I don't know if you know about the newbie accountability pod. And what that is, it's a program that I've initiated, and Beth Hoffman is running the program. And what that is, it is for the benefit of newbies who have been in the program for a while. They do have funds for at least one slow flip to do it themselves, but for some reason are stuck. All right, so this is for someone especially who is stuck and is not able to get by their first slow flip. So this pod, it's like accountability pod. There are only 5 members in that pod, and you can actually enroll in that pod. There's no cost to it. The only limitation, like I said, because there are only 5 members, the way we do it is once the first group graduates, which means they buy their first slow flip, there's openings, and that's when we will accept new members in it. So Beth Hoffman is the person running it. You can send her a direct message, or you can just go on a school and search for newbie pod POD, and my listing will come up, and it explains how it works, including the link. All right. Having said that, let me bring on our guest for today. Jason Parker is our guest. Hi,
Good
Jason. How are you?
evening. I'm great. I'm great.
All right. So, Jason, great guy. He's helped me buy my first property in Michigan. And I thought that was a good way for newbies to get interested and get themselves knowledgeable about how to enter a new market, right? A new market where maybe not a lot of people are there. So even though I have quite a bit of real estate experience, I am very careful in going into new markets. And I want to make sure that we have solid people there, boots on the ground, or somebody who's doing this. And so that's where Jason comes in. But before we do that, and Jason has a short presentation that he has a slideshow that he's going to do as well. Before I do that, let's just ask you some questions, Jason. So, kind of just tell us about yourself before you joined um, Slow Flip program. What is your background in terms of work history and your real estate background?
Sure, absolutely. So, um, I started off originally just in the food service industry. For a short while, I thought that the food service industry is where I wanted to be. And then about 2008, I decided I wanted to dabble in real estate. And at that time, I ended up purchasing 3 rental properties and was able to rent them out pretty quickly, and everything was glorious until the weeks and months followed that. And then we started to run into issues where I needed to do repair and maintenance and all these goofy things for these tenants. And about after 4 or 5 years, I decided that I did not want to be in the rental business anymore. At the time, I had a young family, and we were growing our family at that time. and I found it too disruptive in my everyday life. So I decided that I was going to get away from the rental business back in 2013, and I just focused on my career. Well, about summer of last year, I kind of was looking at my 401k, and I was like, man, I don't think I have enough money to retire. And so I started doing some investigating on investments, and lo and behold, I came across Scott's book. And when I heard the program, and being in the rental business at one point, it really attracted me to the idea of land contracts. Even though I knew about land contracts, it's just when he brought it up and how the passive income would work its way, um, I just kind of fell in love with the program. However, I did have a little analysis by paralysis. I think by the end of summer, I had read the book and was really saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And then it took about a good 3 months before I really acted. And there could be a whole separate presentation just on that. I'll tell you that for sure. And so I made every excuse not to get started. And eventually I think it was like the day after my birthday, you have those moments where you're like, oh, I need to make a change in my life. And so I was like, all right, I'm just going to do it. And so I opened or started an LLC, and then started the transfer of my 401k to my IRA so I could purchase some homes. And that's kind of where I started in slow flip.
Awesome. So you want to tell us how far you are on your slow flip business, and where are your properties?
Absolutely. So um, I'm fortunate enough to have a slow flip market in my backyard. I'm currently located in Saginaw, Michigan, and um, uh, like I said, I started the slow flip program back in December. And with that said, I have purchased 4 homes since then in the Saginaw market. All of this was self-funded with my self-directed IRA. And um, I feel like they have been very successful slow flips. Um, Amir, if you could pull up the first slow flip just so we can kind of talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so give me a moment here.
Sure.
Oh, so all right, something unexpected happening here. Let's see here. All right, just give me a moment. Let me see if I can fix that up.
Sure. I'll keep talking and you can
Yeah,
uh,
just go ahead,
get to
keep.
that slide. Okay. And so my first slow slip was a tired landlord situation, and I purchased the property for, I believe, right around 34,000. And once I purchased the property, I just had joined school, and at the time, I didn't know how to handle a occupied property. And so I wasn't sure if I should ask for a down payment or, um, how I should handle it. Anyways, I jumped on, asked the question, and I come to realize that I'll just maybe would not accept a down payment, and she would just continue or proceed with her monthly payment and put her into a land contract. And so, with it being my first slow flip, I did make a couple mistakes. What was interesting, so I went to the house to talk to her after I had purchased the house the day after, just because I wanted to be a responsible landlord at the time, because that's the way she probably looked at it. And so I wanted to make it clear that I would like her to change into a land contract. And we chatted, and where it went wrong was negotiating with her and not running numbers with her. And we started negotiating price, and she was talking about how what was wrong with the house, and kind of using those leveraging points to talk me down. And so then I started negotiating, and um, you know, we settled on 750 a month, and it would be a $79,000 sales price, which I reduced it down by 5,000. And she took over the house, and everything's been great since. I mean, she's paid late twice, but that's great. That's just more revenue for me. And so far, it's been a good slow flip. And I mean, what's a good indicator or makes me, I guess, feel good about it is I know that she's sincere about making sure she's making her payments. She wants to do right by me. She doesn't want to lose the house. So that's where that personal relationship I had with her, so that I could develop that a little bit, or at least have that. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody should do that. It's just this is in my backyard, so that's
Okay.
kind of where we're at with my first slow flip.
So Jason, like I said, since I am testing this new software, that is glitching, so that's the slides won't unfortunately work.
That's
So
fine.
don't worry about that. So um, here's what everybody w would like to know. And so just for everybody, again, if you're joining us, my name is Amir Khan. I host this newbie coaching call, and today our guest is Jason. Jason is not just a slow flip operator in Michigan, he actually fills there as well. So I bought a property in Saginaw, and Jason helped me fill it, and he's been giving me great advice. And he's actually gone out of his way to do things that none of the fillers have ever done that for me before. I've used a lot of other fillers in our community. And I'll give you a specific example. I don't want to put you on a spot, Jason, but you went out and you did this anyway. I didn't even ask you to do that. So, for example, when you get a property, one of the things in some, I'm not talking about Michigan, but I'm talking about generally. If you get a property, a lot of time in some counties, the county requires you to get the utility, especially the water and the sewage, in your name first, whether you're going to sell it or not even if you're going to put a tenant in there, it has to be in your name. Now that does take some effort. Sometimes the water's been off for a long time, so it's a little bit hassle. But Jason was just kind enough. He actually set the account up by himself. He made sure it was turned on. He talked to the and he filled it for me. So he talked to the tenant buyer, and he made the process so easy for me. Especially being in a new market, it was very important. So the reason why I have him on the call is number one, when you're thinking about going into a new market and you don't see a lot of people in that market, be very, very, very careful. All right. There's a reason why a lot of people in our community are in the same community where everybody else is. St. Louis, Missouri, a lot of pockets in Illinois. It's because there are a lot of people who have properties there. So if you ever have a problem for boots on the ground, for eviction, for repairs, uh, pictures and videos, you can find people to do that. If you go to a new market, the biggest issue is intelligence. Somebody you don't trust who's not in your community may or may not give you the right information. So this way you have somebody in the community or boots on the ground or other people in our community who they have used their trust. So Jason is there in Michigan. Now, Jason, tell us about um, the markets. So generally talk about, obviously the biggest market that comes to mind is Detroit. But I want you to just talk only about markets. Don't talk about specific deals and all that. Just kind of
Sure.
tell us about the three big markets.
So you have the three big markets here in Michigan. You've got the Detroit market. I don't really dabble in that market. If you're interested in Detroit, that'd be Christopher Lee and Leo maybe. But so I don't really know a whole bunch of that. But Flint is my biggest market, and then it would be Saginaw. Flint has a ton of slow flip opportunities. However, do need to be cautious of location and obviously condition. There are just like probably any large city area, there's some sketchy things going on. Water directly connected to the water main with no meter. I've run into three houses like this in the last 3 months that I've been filling, and it's it's challenging, but you can overcome it. The other one is Saginaw. It's a little bit smaller of a market, but when you do find a slow flip, it will work very well for you. Typically, there's only a tiny small pocket in Saginaw where I would suggest not buying.
Mhm.
But other than that, it's a very good market, and I feel like there's growth a little bit in that area. So it makes me feel good about being able to get tenants in it and them take care of the property.
Jason, can you give us some idea? If you don't know the exact number, it's fine. Just wanted to get a population size, the size of these markets. So how big is Flint and how big is Saginaw?
Sure. So Flint itself is roughly between 80 and 100,000. However, there's little suburbs of Flint that add to the population a little bit. It would be hard for me to say. I would say maybe it's closer to 150,000
Hmm.
with the surrounding markets. Um, it's not big, but it's still large. Saginaw, where I've talked highly about, is roughly right around 90,000.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, so that's what the
Okay,
populations look like.
perfect. So next question, which is the biggest question we all have, is about um, the eviction process.
Yeah. So the eviction process is relatively straightforward. If you were to come across an eviction, I would highly recommend a lawyer down here. If you wanted to pursue that, it's about $750. The
Wow.
process starts with a 30-day notice. After the 30-day notice has been served and sent, then you can file for the eviction, and then it's another 30 days after that. So it's a total of about 60 to 80 days to actually evict. And then after that second 30-day period, then that's when you can schedule an appointment with the sheriff's office to complete the eviction.
So overall 60 days, is that what you're saying?
60 to 80 days. It just
Okay.
depends on after that second 30-day period that it just depends on how long it takes for that sheriff's appointment to come by.
Okay. And would you tell us a bit about the contract for deed process?
Yes. So Saginaw, Flint are pretty much no different than any other area, except for they do have some quirks. Saginaw is pretty easygoing. You can do electronic signing to record your deed with the city so that the tenant can get their utilities put on, such as their water. However, Genesee County is a little challenging where you need a wet notarized signature from both parties because the county won't accept anything electronic. And with that said, it does kind of slow down the process of getting the tenant buyer into the house. Like right now, we currently have a situation where a tenant buyer has been in the house for about 5, 6 days, and we're still working the process of getting the paperwork because we had to overnight it. It didn't get overnighted. It was ended up being 3 days,
Hmm.
and then they signed it, and then they sent it back. It was a total of a week, and we were having issues with her getting on her utilities, and she's been in the house for 5 days.
Okay. Again, let me remind everyone that today's guest on our newbie coaching call is Jason Parker. He's from Michigan and he's telling us about these new two markets, Flint and Saginaw. And before we go and take questions, I'm just going to say hi to everyone who's checked in today because a lot of people come in, and when we have recordings, you don't actually see who attended these meetings, and there are quite a number of people. And so let me just say hi. I see Michael is here. I see Becky's here. Hi, Bob. I see you. Brian is here. Cassie is here. Catherine is here. Cindy's here. Dennis is here. Derek is here. I see Dawn is here. Felicia is here. Francis. I see Heatherly. Hi, Heatherly. Jing is here. I see Joseph. Uh, Carney is here. Kevin is here. Kimberly is here. Mary is here. Nicole is here. Hi, Nicole. Rachel is here. Richard is here, Ruben is here, Seth is here, Chantel is here, Stephen is here, Tammy is here, and Teresa is here. So welcome to all of you. I know it's late, and so I appreciate you taking the time. So if you have any question for Jason, you can raise your hand on right on the right next to share. You should see a raise hand icon. If you don't see it, you should be able to find under react and just raise your hand and I'll call on you. All right, so before we start taking questions, anything that is different in your opinion, either in Flint or Saginaw compared to the other places where people are buying slow flips?
Um, Not really that comes to mind. Um, it's hard comparing it when I guess I never really shopped around for other markets to kind of see or get an understanding of where I would potentially want to buy outside of Saginaw since I already lived in a slow flip market. So I guess it would be hard for me to answer that.
Okay, cool. All right, so our first question is from Michael. Michael, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, I just have a quick question with regards to Flint. Isn't there a water problem with lead pipes there? Isn't that a big difference in terms of, the market?
Well, yeah. So there was an issue about, I want to say it was 10 or maybe even 15
Yeah,
years now
15 years
ago.
ago.
Yep, 15 years ago. There was a water issue. Um, there was some neglect on the city hall and city mayor or city manager, and they have since worked on working out all of that. Um, yes, I think there's people that are uncomfortable about the water in Flint, but there's still 80,000 plus people living there, and they still need to live there. And so, with that said, uh, they have water reports and everything's up to par where it needs to be. Uh, so I don't really see any issues with the whole water part of it. Um, and the other thing that's, kind of interesting about Flint is there's a lot of talk about in the next 10 years about manufacturing coming back to that area. And so the economy is looking forward to that, which will obviously bring more people back to the area and hopefully also the demand in homes.
Okay, cool. All right. Next up is Heatherly. Go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Okay, this is so great. Totally, Michigan was not in my head, but now I'm like, hmm. One thing, Jason, I'm noticing just on the houses that are on school. And so question is, do you see, are most houses, do they have basements or is it kind of half and half?
It's kind of half and half. There are typically more basements in the Michigan area than not. But you do run across houses with crawl spaces or no crawl space or basement. So, and it's just on a
Okay.
slab. So, you run across all of them, but typically there's more homes with basements. And also those homes are the ones that will typically sell a little bit faster. People have the desire to want to have a basement for that additional storage.
Okay, that's good to know. And then the last question I had is due to the fact that it's so cold in the winters, have you seen where you have sold a property um, to a tenant buyer and then there's a big leak or there's some water, plumbing situation and there's an issue where they're trying to go back to you because of that? Have you
It's
experienced
funny.
anything like that?
Is somewhat. So Amir's house, let's use that as an example. So all of the copper was stripped out of the house except for where the inlet water comes in, and the pipe had actually burst right there. And so we had to cut it back probably an additional, I want to say 10 feet just to get the water connected with the meter and so on so that the tenant or the tenant buyer could get their water put on. Um, so yes, there is typically issues with freezing water here and pipes bursting, and so it just depends on the basement itself. Like Amir's house, it's more of like a basement slash crawl space area, and they are going to need to um, over insulate that pipe coming to the inlet because it's coming directly out of the ground into this cold, uninsulated crawl space
Mm.
area to keep that from freezing.
And do they seem like they're open to do that?
Yes, they do. Um,
Okay.
they they seem to be really good buyers. These individuals, which was interesting, is they had a land contract that they were selling in Pennsylvania to buy Amir's land contract, and they were delayed about a month. And luckily enough, it worked out for them. We kept marketing the property. It was actually a little challenging to kind of somewhat sell. I think it was based off of just the setup of the house and a little bit of the condition. But once we did find the tenant buyer, I truly believe after connecting with them over this last week, 'cause I've spent some time with them since I've sold them the house, is that I really saw, when I first got there, they had already had all their stuff moved in. It looked like it was decorated inside. They were
Oh,
already
wow.
making
Really?
improvements on the house. Yes, they were already working on sealing up. Amir, you remember how there was holes behind the shower for the
Yeah.
access? They
Mm.
were already sealing that up. I mean, that just goes to show with them only being in the house for 5 days, they don't even have water at that point. They're using the portable water that they're bringing from jugs
Yeah.
to stay in the house with
Yeah.
because we were still working on the water.
Yeah. So,
Well,
I mean, those kind of problems happen everywhere. I mean,
It's absolutely.
winterizing, people do that all the time. So I don't think that's specific. But I found that this is an interesting market. And so the fact that we have somebody like Jason in that market who can not only give you market intelligence, but he actually can walk the property, take pictures, and then also help you fill it, you know. So I believe we have two people in Michigan market, right, Jason? But I forgot the other guy's name. He doesn't do your area. He does more on Detroit. Is that correct?
That is correct. Christopher Lee um, does most of Detroit, and then he also works in Flint as well. But then I work in Flint as well, and so we kind of work the territory together.
And also for everybody's information, this is what Mike Grizzle told me, okay? And maybe if he sees it and he can correct me. The last time I spoke to him and I talked to him about Detroit, and he just told me right up front, he said, look, I'm just telling you as early as now, as soon as I put any property Detroit address in my system, it comes with a red flag. Very few carriers. I'm not saying that nobody is carrying it, but you're going to have a problem if you actually buy a property in Detroit. And one of the reason is there are a lot of because of fires, there were a lot of vacancies, and there's still a lot of properties that are boarded up, and there's a hazard that, if one catches fire, the other would catch fire, and there'll be a whole thing. So that's one reason why some people, at least me, I've been away from Detroit market, but I thought this was an interesting market. Okay. Next is Bob. Go ahead, unmute yourself.
Jason, thank you very much for joining us this evening. We hear a lot about running ghost ads to test the market. Did you run any ghost ads? And if you did, what did you learn from doing that?
Honestly, I didn't run any ghost ads. With having somewhat of a rental background prior to getting into this, also didn't look at 100 homes. I looked at probably 20 homes before I started buying, but I also had common knowledge prior to that. So, also with a slight construction background with my older brother at one point, with roofing and framing, I have some good experience with, being able to assess a structure. And so I actually completely just forgot where I was going with my question or with my answer. But what was the main part of your question? I'm sorry. I got rambling.
Ghost ads.
Ghost ads. So I didn't have to run those. I was able to really just kind of study up on the market. What I did is as soon as I identified a property, I started checking out the neighborhood. I would get on Zillow, see what the surrounding houses are renting for. I would check on Facebook, same thing. Excuse me. Check the same thing, see what properties are renting for in that area, and do my due diligence of understanding, would this neighborhood hold a $900 monthly based off of it being, say, a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, in the same similar condition as a rental.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
All right. So again, reminding everyone, today we have Jason Parker, our guest. He is from the Michigan market, and he's telling us about that market. So if you have any questions, go into Zoom and click on either React, or if you see the raise hand icon, just click on that, and I'll call on you. Jason, let's talk about rents. You just mentioned rents. So let's just throw some numbers out there, and I know it'll still depend on property condition and all that. So you
Sure.
want to just the numbers, number of bedroom, number of bath, square footage. What rent did that specific property go for? You don't even have to give addresses, right? You can mention mine as well, but we want to have an idea of number of bedroom, bath, square footage. What rent are we getting there?
Okay. So let me just start off with a quick synopsis. 2-bedroom, 1-baths. Typically, you can yield about a $2,500 down payment, and maybe between 800 and 875 for a monthly, depending on condition, of course. I have one right now. It's actually 700, but it's because the condition is pretty poor. And so for 2-bedroom, 1-bath, that's kind of what you would see in the Saginaw Flint area. Now, 3-bedroom, 1-baths, depending on the condition, you can yield anywhere between 3,000 and 4,000, and ask for a monthly of between 850 and somewhere in the upwards of sometimes even 1,200. I have one property that I'm looking at on Hamilton and Flint, and I think it might be able to yield a $1,200 monthly just based off of its location, the square footage of the home, and condition.
So those are very strong rents, right? I mean, no matter what market you look at, those are pretty good rents. So the other question is, are there enough properties in the market in the price range that we would like them to be?
Yes, for the most part. Now, I've had some of our investors who are buying in this area buy a little bit on the higher side and expect that the house to still yield a high monthly when it's not going to. Like, for example, we have a couple 2-bedroom, 1 baths that people paid 35,000 for, and it's hard to get more than an 850 monthly on that, especially if it's 700 square feet. And that it's a hard pill for people to swallow for a 700 square foot home to pay over 850, unless it was bigger. I mean, it would need to have bonus rooms and things like that, and this house does not have that.
Got it. Okay. Next up, we have a question from Chantel. Go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I was saying thank you. Hello to Amir and Jason and everybody. And I know that Jason, you said that you did not do you didn't do ghost ads yourself, but I just had a general question for
Sure.
anybody on the call that has done ghost ads. I've never done one because I just sort of felt I just had an idea or a feeling that it was sort of scammy. I had somebody to tell me, well, you can just look up you can Google like and find out where the house actually is, and if it's not where you say it is, and then if somebody's calling you on it and you keep saying, oh well, it's under it's being rehabbed, and you keep pushing them out, like it kind of looks like a scam. And me being so new, I don't want to get that reputation, but I also know that it's important to have a buyer's list when you're to it helps a lot to have a buyer's list so that you can, get rid of your properties relatively quickly. What have people done, or what are some general ideas? I know it's off topic, but somebody brought it up, so I just wanted to ask.
I can answer it just to start. What I would do is just take similar properties or look at similar properties in different markets. So let's just say if I were going to run a ghost ad in Saginaw, what I would do is I would look for probably a property in the Detroit or maybe even the Flint area to capture some pictures, just so I'm in a similar region so that the pictures could look legit. And then I would post an ad out there, similar to how I post, excuse me, some of my still flip ads, and just see what the feedback is that comes in. I don't think you're going to get tagged as a scammer doing that. I have been tagged as a scam. We could talk about that briefly here in a second, but you know, I've put houses on the market for 5 days on Facebook, responded to 80 people, and then ended up selling it within that 5 days, and nobody's reported me as a scammer. Nobody knows who you're communicating with, so I wouldn't worry about being targeted as a scammer. Just make sure you do your proper due diligence in the sense of making the ad look legit, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Another comment I have is I don't know if you've seen a posting by Cameron, Chantel. So
No.
go in and look at that posting. It's very interesting, is because Cameron has been in the community for a while. He does a lot of filling for a lot of different people, and this specific topic that you're talking about, being called out, scammer, and all that. So he talks about that. He shows you some example, and I think Scott also mentioned that during the call yesterday. So I would just read that, and that might kind of give you a little bit kind of confidence in doing it. You do need a little thick skin to be able to do that. But unfortunately, this is how the business is. If you're going to post some ads, If you're going to fill it yourself, then this is something you'll have to go through. There'll be people who will question whether this property is real. They will question whether you are real, all sorts of things. So you
Hey,
just have
Amir, could I just tell a brief story? Do you remember?
sure.
Did you remember excuse me, sorry. Did you see my story back in February about me being called out,
Oh
Amir?
yeah, I remember that. Yeah, yeah,
Let
yeah.
me just
Definitely.
tell a little bit about that real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jason,
So
real quick, I just wanted to clarify with Amir. I'm not talking about actual properties that I have, like real
Mhm.
properties that I have. I mean, like ghost ads. I'm just trying to build a buyer's list for properties, and I don't have any yet to just have a ghost ad. That's what I mean, people are going to think what they want of when you're trying to sell a $30,000 house.
Sure, sure.
They're going to believe it's too good to be true or what have you. But I mean, when you don't have a property and you're just doing a ghost ad to try and build a buyer's list, how do you overcome that? Like not getting caught up by somebody who sort of feels that you're scammy if, since you really don't have a property, how do you not get caught up in that?
That's a good question. I've not done it because I've always relied on fillers in the community because I just think I'm not good at that, so I just stick to what I do. But yeah, Jason, you want to tell that story? That's actually pretty interesting.
Thank you.
Sure.
yep, absolutely. So um, again, I started slow flipping in December. I had bought and sold probably about 4 homes within the first 2.5 months. And about the first week in February, I was negotiating a deal with a possible tenant buyer for my house on Russell. And when I was negotiating the deal, you know, the face-to-face interaction was very amicable. Um, you know, he liked the property, I could tell. He got home, he sent me this lengthy email of how he would like to restructure or renegotiate the deal that we kind of lightly discussed prior to leaving and going back home after the tour. So, anyways, get this lengthy email. He wants to renegotiate. I read it. It's way far off. Excuse me. He wants me to discount the house by half, and he doesn't understand why it has to be set up on a 30-year term. And he also misunderstood one thing, and it kind of drove me nuts. About he thought I said something about how he could not have a home inspection. Well, anyways, I wrote him a lengthy email back, well articulated, and saying that this is not how I run my business. This is a business. I'm selling a product. If this doesn't fit your needs, then this isn't probably going to work out. Well, anyways, took a nap. Not even 2 hours later, my phone is blowing up from some of my employees. They had saw the post that this guy had called me out as a scammer on the Saginaw Neighborhood Watch. So probably everybody's community, if you're larger than probably 50,000, you might have your own neighborhood watch on Facebook. Well, anyways, this guy was calling me out as a scammer, saying that I was selling a house and I was jacking up the price and inflating the cost, and I wouldn't allow him to do inspections, and I wasn't being reasonable and everything else, just throwing the book at me. And as soon as I see it, I'm stressing out. I'm a director of EVS and food service department at a hospital here in Saginaw, and so it's important to me to have a good image. I have 400 people that work for me on a daily basis that are likely to buy one of my homes, and I can't afford to have that type of reputation. And so, freaking out, I call my VP and tell her what happened, why it happened. Um, and she told me to relax. She's like, it's not a big deal. She says, you're just being a businessman, blah, blah, blah. After she said that, I calmed down a little bit. Then I posted it on school, and you could look at some of the comments if you were to look up Jason Parker scam. You could see the post come up. But it was just one of those things that Amir hit on before. I hit on a little bit as well. You need a thick skin in this business because you will potentially be called out. At this point, I've sold in the upwards of 10 houses, whether they be my properties or filling properties. And I'm starting to develop that thick skin. And it's just going to be experience that gets you there.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Cool. I'm sorry. I've just been advised that the R actually video capture software that we are using is quite choppy. I can't fix it right now, unfortunately, but it looks like our audio is fine, but our video is quite choppy. So hopefully next time we can fix that problem. Next up is Bob. Go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Thank you. In response to Chantel's question and my comment when I asked Jason about the ghost ads that he might have run, that's a question that I ask a number of different slow flip people, and I find that there's quite a range of their comfort level. Some people will leave it up for a number of days and actually interact with the responses, and other people will leave it up for one day. They just want to see how many responses they get, and they take it down very quickly. As far as building a buyer's list, that's well, I'm a beginner, so I cannot address that, but I thought I'd share what other people have told me.
Let me. I think you guys may be thinking a little too much into it. Okay, if you're going to fill remotely or even locally, yes, you may be able to develop a buyer's list with ghost ads, but there's so many variables to work with of what people are looking for in the sense of homes. I wouldn't allow that to slow you down in the sense of moving forward and just doing different research. Look at the Zillow. So go to the neighborhood that you're looking to purchase in, change the filter to rentals, and then look at the rentals in that area and see what people are paying for rent. And that will give you a good idea of what people will be willing to pay for a monthly in that area. I think we're kind of overcomplicating the whole ghost ad part of it. To me, I see a ghost ad as not important to find the buyers. You'll find the buyers when you start advertising, or have the fillers do that. Where your focus really needs to be is concentrating on market itself and looking to see what people are renting properties for, to see if it makes sense, the type of home you're buying, what is it renting for? Because you've got all these landlord experts in town. They're the ones renting out these properties and been doing it for eons. They know what it's going to sell for. You know, that's kind of my 2 cents about it. I don't want to go too much into the weeds about it, but I wouldn't over focus on ghost ads. I see the ghost ads as for seeing if the market is interested in land contracts, and people will pay what you want them to if you're looking for, like, well, you guys keep talking about buyers list. You're not going to have, I have a couple of buyers list. I've answered over probably 1,000 ads at this point. It's hard to recall which people are going to buy something from you when you actually do have something.
Yeah. Also, going back to the ghost ad, both of these markets are actually not completely new. There are people already in this market, so it's not
Yes.
that there's nobody in this market. So ghost ad, what Scott teaches is ghost ad is for a market that nobody's in. So that's when you need to run the test, because nobody's in there, so nobody really knows. So, but people already are buying in Flint and even in Saginaw. So I'm not completely new to it, but I think it's relatively new in sense that there are fewer people doing this. So that's why I thought it would be a good topic to talk about today. All right. So the last question we have from Francis. Go ahead, unmute yourself.
Hi, Amir. Hi, Jason, and everyone else.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey, Jason's actually helping me film my very first purchase. Hi, Jason.
Hi.
I was just wondering, so I closed on the property last Friday, and you were talking about utilities. I bought the property from Tristan Kai, actually, from the group. And he said that he doesn't normally turn the utilities on. He waits for the tenant buyer to do that. Do you suggest that I turn the utilities on? I don't know. This is my first one, so.
Yeah. It just depends. Yes and no.
Okay.
Okay, yes, I prefer the utilities to be on, at least the electrical. I don't typically worry about turning the gas on for properties because there's just no need, unless it's the winter time and you are worried about pipes bursting and you would like to keep it at maybe 50 degrees to combat the potential of bursting pipes. But for the most part, I won't turn the gas on. And typically, it is a challenge to turn the water on. I highly suggest not turning the water on until the tenant buyer is in place. Now, let's kind of go back to your question. So utilities in general, yes, I would turn them on. However, your property in particular has been vacant more than 6 months. Is that correct?
I'm not sure. Tristan said that he bought it a month ago. So,
I'm pretty sure it has been because he actually reached out to me about the electrical.
oh, okay.
Yep. And so with it being off more than 6 months, you will have to go through an electrical inspection by the city of Flint.
Okay.
And it costs $140. They'll come out and basically they check the integrity of your electrical system in that house before allowing you to turn the power back.
Understood. So okay. Do I coordinate that? I'll message you, I guess,
Okay.
about that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys. So thank you, Jason, for being here today and sharing your, your thoughts and your experience in the Flint and Saginaw market. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you all next week. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you.